VC should not stand for venture capital. That's obvious. That's table stakes. That's what every firm has. 100% of them have capital. You know what none of them have? What VC should really stand for: value creation capability. Sitting on a board or a structured investment is not a capability. Being at the end of a phone to solve a problem is not a capability.
That is Sam Tidswell-Norrish. Sam was part of the founding of a private equity platform that has growth, venture, and buyout products as part of their near 10 billion of AUM. The firm innovated the value creation model with a radical platform approach. Today, Sam is chair and founder of Opus, a community of early-stage entrepreneurs that rewrites the VC model. But here, it stands for value creation. What inspired me most in a conversation with Sam was his obsession to question existing norms with an approach of radical empathy and reciprocity.
They said, the only stuff that you've ever achieved, Sam, has been because of other people. The sooner you realize that, the sooner everything becomes easier. And it's true. Anything you or I have ever achieved is because of others. I unplugged myself from the Matrix, took the blue pill, and off we went.
This is the Venture Lab podcast, and I'm your host, Luis.
Ladies and gentlemen, by way of introduction.
Sam, I'm strongly convinced that people are very much shaped by their earliest experiences and also by the context of their upbringing. What is your earliest memory or experience that has an impact on what you're doing today?
Good question. And thanks for having me, Luis. It's yeah, I'm a big admirer of what you're up to. Um, First memory, God knows, can't remember. I mean, it's certainly not as young as some. But the most impactful thing I think from an early age was I went to boarding school at the age of 7. I've got a 5-year-old son now. He's definitely not ready to go to boarding school in 2 years, and that's too young to send someone. But it shapes you. It's a tough environment. I wrote 2 letters home a day for 2 years, and it creates a sense of social pressure, a sense of survival of the fittest. I think that definitely shaped who I am today. And whilst I wouldn't send my kids to boarding school at that age, and I think there's probably a little bit of resentment that I did go that early and left home. It's definitely instilled some qualities that I don't hate.
What are those qualities?
I think this kind of standout one is probably a degree of it's one of those things you say and everyone who's watching goes, the fact that you're saying that means you don't have it. Is social awareness. I think people who
Okay.
talk about social awareness are
Yeah.
terrible. But when you're 7 years old and you're in an environment surrounded by people, young kids and peer pressure and old kids kicking the crap out of you, you change, you adapt, you learn to survive, and you learn to fit in quickly. And there's a ton of examples and shallow scars that you have from when you didn't fit in or when you did something wrong or when you got beaten up by the big kid. And that happened a lot back then. That was 30 years ago. We had all sorts of crazy practices at boarding school back then. And I think I think that ability to socially adapt, and to fit in is something that you can't teach many people later in life. And so it's definitely helped, and particularly helped, I think, as it relates to relationship building, trust building, the broader bucket of networking, for sure.
Yeah. Also, I guess when you don't really fit in at the beginning, you also need to try to understand people, trying to like read them in a way that probably others can't, which then relates to the relationship and building deeper connections. So this is also the context in which you're making use of those early experiences right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head there, which is you have to, in any given social environment, immediately put yourself in the other person's shoes. When you're making a decision or taking an action, what does it mean for the other person? How will they react? And most importantly, how will they feel? Everything is about emotion. And people forget that. They forget it in every context. A brand isn't just what you stand for. It's not just your values. it's not just what your proposition does. A brand in a business that you build is how you make people feel. And that I think it comes from the best marketers are people who are hyper socially aware, I think.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, boarding school can help, but I wouldn't advocate for it.
And your career took a phenomenal path very early on. Can you walk me through this, through the different steps?
I certainly can walk you through it. I don't think it's been phenomenal. It certainly doesn't feel that way. It feels like it's been a lot of hard work. Yeah, I began at I did a postgraduate in business, and I did that because my undergraduate was relatively easy. I did a social policy undergrad degree. I'm not a big advocate for the British further education system. I think it's fundamentally broken. I think the US system is far better at that stage. And so I did the postgrad and then went into banking, initially in a technology role and then in a trading role at Barclays Capital. And I was no good at it, and I didn't enjoy it. In fact, I hated it. Um, and I wasn't designed, I don't think, to be plugged into the matrix working in a large organization.
Yeah.
So at the first opportunity I got, after I'd done a reasonable amount of time, I think 4.5 years, I unplugged myself from the matrix, took the blue pill, and off we went. And I met a guy who took me on in a initially, I think, unpaid role in a fintech company, and that guy became a great friend and great mentor. And we grew this fintech company a long time ago, before fintech was really a
Yeah.
thing. It did mobile banking software, one of the first. We grew it to a 2 billion sterling market cap, publicly listed, 2,000 people, went through a terrible time in the public markets, ended up taking it private, cutting the staff down to 400 people, selling it not for 2 billion, but for 70 million sterling. But through that, met someone who wanted to work with us in our next chapter, a guy called Rob. And we went in September 2015 to New York to design a new model for private equity. And that's what we did. We built a new model for private equity specialist investing. And when I say new model, I think maybe we're giving ourselves too much credit there, but definitely a differentiated model, where we combined investors, operators, and innovators and built a platform that had not tens of people, but hundreds of people on it, building value within portfolio companies, specifically in financial technology. And we had a good degree of success. We built a brand that was recognized in the market over quite a short period of time. That firm today manages, I think, just shy of 10 billion of AUM, and operates across venture growth and buyout. And then within that, I had an opportunity to do an operating partner type role, running with a team of people a portfolio company, a large data business called Dun& Bradstreet. I was on point for various activities within the private equity firm, like the fundraising, coverage, marketing, brand, communications, business development type stuff. I've had an amazing run, but it was an amazing privilege, and I left that business on the 1st of January, and I remain a shareholder and an LP, but not an employee. But the biggest advocate for what those guys are doing. It's been an amazing journey, and they're going to do an amazing job.
Wow. There were so many things, like some things I need to come back to. Like I'm interested in the differentiation of the private equity model that you established. So you, instead of like just providing the value of capital allocation, you also provided a platform and a network to the portfolio companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the model investing, operating, innovating really mirrors how the industry has transformed. When everyone forgets the alternative investing industry, particularly private markets, is still relatively nascent, call it 50, 60 years old. And it began with the KKR leverage buyout investing. Capital was table stakes. it then, the table stakes evolve to be firms with an operating capability. If you don't have an operating capability as a private equity firm, you should probably rethink your model. And then the next wave thereafter was an innovation capability. How deeply can you understand technology? A couple of the big reasons that deals go south are management teams aren't evolved quick enough, and technology requirements are underestimated. So how do you build that capability in-house so that when you go through a diligence, value creation, planning, and execution exercise, you know exactly where the efficiencies are and where the opportunities are through technology. And that's never been more prevalent today. Every private equity firm, in my view, should have an in-house AI capability, people focused, not side of desk, but focused on how do we build an AI core that we can roll out assessments and capabilities in every portfolio company.
And this was also your selling point towards LPs and founders then, this special model that you developed?
Yeah, and with it, I think a deep specialization. Smaller or younger firms can't invest in everything. And at Motive Partners, we invested in financial technology. Um, we have a great team of super talented investors, operators, innovators who are uniquely qualified in the financial technology space. And all we have to do is look at the leadership team and the profiles on the website to see how qualified those people are. They're the best of the best in the industry. And with that comes unique experience through highs and lows in different markets, unique experience around new technologies, unique relationships that you can exploit. And so when it comes to positioning the platform and capital from Motive Partners to a founder, that's a very unique proposition that a generalist investor can't offer. And therefore, generalist investors knock on the door of the specialist investors asking for partnership in transactions as well. And you often see that GPs partnering where one GP has a different type of edge to another. So it becomes a very reciprocating capability, I think, in the industry.
Yeah, it definitely makes you stand out and provide additional value to companies. In preparation for this conversation, one thing that really stood out to me was your ability to build deep relationships and also a very strong network. And I saw that you said that you're on a mission to be the greatest connector and creator of opportunity in the world. Where do you think this is coming from, that you value personal relationships so highly? And why do you think it's so important to build and to have a strong network?
Yeah, I don't know where I publicly said that, but it sounds like the sort of thing I'd say. Because
It's
it's
on your
true.
website.
Wow, there we go. So yes, in short, that is my life's mission. And with it, I have a couple of two, in fact, significant industry theses that I'm going to spend the rest of my career focused on. One is the lower middle market space in private equity, and I'm thinking through how to work on that over time. And the other is something I've been very focused on this year, which is the evolution of the venture capital space, and we'll talk about that. The wrapper around all of that, and the thing that I think um, I can have a differentiated perspective on, is the role of relationships
Yeah.
and what that means for other people. I don't necessarily want to go out there and just have loads of friends. I don't need to go for beers with lots of people. It's more around, if someone's going to invest time or want to spend time with me, how can I make it worth their time? What are the tools in my kit bag, the capabilities that mean that I have got something to offer them that can be useful? I don't think there's anyone I've met or I know that if they asked for my support in something, I couldn't give a very good run at trying to help them with. Because there's a suite of tools now that I and we have built that allow us to go out to a wider distribution capability to help
Yeah.
solve that. And that for me is a point of differentiation. I can be an access point into a whole new universe for anyone that I value and values me.
And have you had special experiences like yourself that showed you the power of human relationships and led you to this quite profound appreciation?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a realization that a very well-known business leader said to me. It was said in quite stark contrast, but they said, the only stuff that you've ever achieved, Sam, have been because of other people. The sooner you realize that, the sooner everything becomes easier. And it's true. Anything you or I have ever achieved is because of others saying yes, because of others' ideas, because of others' support, because of all sorts of things in the fabric of humanity. And when you realize that, um, the game becomes much clearer. Um, you have to think through what in any given desire or goal that you have, um, what the sequence of people in that ecosystem are to make it happen. And Mark Andreessen said something not long ago around if you have a goal, if you have a desire, and you push hard enough, the world just moves around you. And I believe that's true, but it moves around you much more effectively if you're thinking about what it means for other people and you're accepting of the fact that it won't happen because you're just pushing.
Yeah.
It will happen because other people are allowing you to push and other people are allowing you to do something. So always putting yourself in the perspective of the onlooker.
Yeah, because you also mentioned that to build those relationships, like you first need to figure out what it is that the other person wants, and then secondly, help them achieve that. But how do you do this? Like, how do you find someone's underlying motivation in a conversation?
I don't think it needs to be Machiavellian. I think you should ask. Before you and I finish this podcast, I will have asked in 5 different ways what's important to you. How can I help you on your journey? Um, Before we started this podcast, I learned more about where you want to take it and what your passions are, how you've gone from architecture to uncovering the venture capital space and where you see your path in the future. You and I aren't going to do this podcast and never speak again. This is the beginning of a relationship that can be reciprocal. So it just requires you to be inquisitive and to invest the time in it. Relationships and being thoughtful and good at building relationships is massively labor intensive. It's not for the lazy. Um, and there's no way to cut corners on it. There's no AI to help you build relationships more effectively. And so you've got to be willing to invest the time, and you've got to be um, passionate and impatient about getting to know people. Unfortunately, it requires being glued to a phone.
Yeah.
Most people say you can't build relationships digitally. You can't, but you can absolutely enhance them.
Yeah.
You can absolutely show someone you care with a message in the morning. You can absolutely show someone that you're thinking about them when you give them a call and out the blue and tell them you've got an idea for them. But you've got to be proactive.
And so if we move on from this, like you mentioned that at the beginning of the year you left your position at Motive Partners and you jumped to build Opus with full capacity. What is the mission that you're on with Opus?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking the question. In the same way that we experienced the private equity industry changing, and I had the fortune with some talented people to build a value creation capability, I believe that the venture capital space has been very slow to adopt the mindset that you have to have capability as well as capital. VC should not stand for venture capital. That's obvious. That's table stakes. That's what every firm has.
Yeah.
100% of them have capital.
Yeah.
You know what none of them have? What VC should really stand for: value creation capability. Sitting on a board or a structured investment is not a capability, being at the end of a phone to solve a problem is not a capability. A capability is the ability to distribute, the ability to problem solve. It's an intentional way of building an investment platform. And there aren't many firms that are doing that today. And that's where I think the industry is going. Why is the industry going there? Because as companies, young companies become less capital intensive,
Yeah.
because technology becomes more affordable. The fact that you and I could build a dating app by the end of this podcast for $50 a month instead of $10 million over 2 years a decade ago tells you all you need to know. And in a moment we can talk about seed strapping, but VC firms are going to have to move downstream. They're going to have to go from Series C's and B's to A's and C's and Pre's. And they're going to be very competitive. And if you don't have capability, you're not going to get the allocation. If you're a founder, you should not, once you've got the queue of VCs out the door, don't accept the first people that come along or just the best terms. Ask, what are you going to do? The power dynamic is shifting into the hands of the quality founders.
And do you also think that the venture capital model is broken in the direction that the whole exit model is basically kind of changing right now, because the public markets are getting much more unattractive for companies, and we have seen, like especially in last weeks, like also massive private rounds. So how do you think will this affect the venture capital model?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the world is moving super fast. Obviously, we've had an environment over the last 2 to 5 years where the secondary and continuation vehicle environment has become much more prevalent, and I don't think that slows down. And the public markets become less attractive over time, particularly in a choppy environment. The reality, though, I think, is we're probably moving to a world where there's a lot more smaller, profitable businesses. The topic that people aren't talking, or at least I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about, is what does longer term cash flowing ownership look like? The fact that you raise a fund that has a 10 to 12 year life cycle and a 5 to 10 year hold on an investment is, I think, probably a model that's going to have to shift as well.
Yeah.
It's not just an investment strategy shift. It's an entire shift in how allocators are thinking about ownership. If a company that's building a dating app originally was, took $10 million to start, $2 million 2 years to ship the product, and a decade later is burning $50 million a year with 500 staff. Today, that can be a 10-person team that's profitable within 18 months. That's a very real change in company dynamic. And that can be a cash flowing business quickly. It can be a business that pays dividends. And so models like that reward the patient capital model. I think we're going to see, and particularly in the family office space, a shift in how people want to engage in the early stage market. And looking for quick exits is probably going to be a part of a strategy, but not the only strategy.
Yeah, so people don't want to sacrifice liquidity anymore for revenue. I suppose it's also a change.
Correct.
And where do you position Opus in this landscape? So, for instance, is it do you see it more as a venture studio or an accelerator, a community, an incubator? Well, how do you position it in the field?
Opus is the VC for everyone. But VC doesn't stand for venture capital, it stands for value creation. And we're building a distribution capability, a value creation capability that hinges on community. So that when Luis joins as a founder, your knowledge, network, access, experience has just be multiplied by the 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people that are all around the world part of the community. When you have a problem because you're having a fallout with a co-founder, our AI tool that connects you into the network through our app can help you speak to 10 people that have had a similar problem, or speak to one of our law firm partners for free that will lay out your options, or join any number of events each week where you can share and talk about your challenge and crowdsource the knowledge to help solve that challenge. And that's the same whether you've got a talent problem, a funding problem, a commercial challenge, a marketing opportunity, technology, operations, wellness, whatever it might be. We've created a system to categorize the challenge area, to create distribution into a way to solve that problem, and to do it through community. Think of it like a network state. When Luis joins from Düsseldorf, or Sarah joins from South Africa, or Ahmed joins from the UAE, or Jimmy in New York, everyone brings different experiences, knowledge, networks, capabilities to that platform and strengthens it for others. And that's what we're building. And we're wrapping that founder community with the VC community. And maybe at some point we have our own investment capability, but right now we're just focused on the value creation capability.
Yeah.
The one that the VCs haven't been focused on.
Yeah, I really love this approach. And something that it reminds me of that earlier this week, I've been to an event where T.S. Anil, like a CEO from Monzo, gave a talk, and he said something that really stuck with me, which is, don't put your heart into the company, but put it into the problems of your customers. And, I mean, you already touched on this in the previous answer, but what are the problems that the founders, the people you're working with, are experiencing?
It's super varied, but we're a community designed for early stage entrepreneurs, idea to Series A, and cross sector, all sectors. You could be in the food and beverage space, you could be building a software business. It's as long as you're not doing anything nefarious, you're eligible. And as long as you're a backable business, so you're not a sole trader, one-man band, fractional something. If your business is backable and your idea to Series A, you're eligible to join. And in that space, people's problems have a huge amount of overlap. There's a real level of similarity irrespective of what you're building, and therefore the ability to collectively solve those challenges is relatively well, not easy, but relatively feasible.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine with this approach you get a lot of, and also with the value proposition that you build, like you get a lot of applications. So how do you, like, what are the criteria, or how do you select the ones where you think that will be a great fit to work with and to join the community?
So we have a process. There's a wait list, an application, an interview, and then an onboarding. And we're live in the UK for Europe, UAE for Middle East, and South Africa for Africa, and we'll be live in New York for North America later this year, early next year. And that process allows us to see if someone's the right DNA. And the right DNA is someone who really understands reciprocity, someone who understands that to take, you have to also give. Kindness is also a quality that we really value, because it's kindness in the face of adversity. It's easy to be kind when things are good, but when you're having a really shit day, can you still be kind? That's a test of someone's real quality. We have a zero tolerance policy for assholes. If someone's rude to someone or a dick, they're gone. It doesn't matter how special they think they are. They're out, because bad apples spoil the pack. So there's a very, very, very strong community ethos that's quite special. You join and it feels good, and that's how it should be, because everyone's there to help each other.
This is very cool. Sam, we have a closing tradition on this podcast, which is called the open letter. So you can address a one sentence open letter to a specific person or group. So for instance, to your younger self, to future entrepreneurs, to the Opus community. Who would that be and what would you say?
Gosh, you put this in the brief you kindly sent, but I haven't given it a lot of thought. I thought it was going to come to me instantly. Um, I'm just thinking about some of my favorite quotes. I'm a big quote person. Um, I think Henry Ford was one of the great innovators of our time, well, of the last century or so, and he said a number of quotes. Some of his quotes are the best out there, that I've adopted and tried to live by, and I'll tell you two of them. One of them is, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, and that's the embrace change and
Yeah.
push yourself out your comfort zone. The second is, whether you believe you can or you can't, you will always be right. That one is for sure. US is very different to the UK. The US is very different to Europe. In America, they believe they can do anything, and they celebrate the failure with it. It's really important. Um, One of the greatest, I believe, living inventors. You've got Tim Berners-Lee, who created the web, who I've had the fortune of working with on their foundation. But you've also got a guy who you probably haven't heard of, a guy called Mark Porat. Mark founded a company called General Magic in the early 90s. He created the iPhone, he created cloud, the emoji, intelligent
Wow.
agentics, all before it existed, 12 years before it existed. They say, and Steve Jobs, I think, said directly, without the work that Mark and the General Magic team did, the iPhone wouldn't exist, Android wouldn't exist. And so um, the reason I bring him up is he's sort of famous for the phrase, failure isn't the end, it's the beginning. And that's how we have to view this world. Um, there's no, people get concerned about risk.
Yeah.
It, if you're in a first world country and you fail in building a business, you're not going to end up under a bridge starving. It's almost a zero chance of that happening. But people get into a comfort zone. They believe their risks are higher than they are, and they don't go and build with bravery. In the US, they think hugely unencumbered,
Yeah.
and they get way more obsessed. In the UK, the 9 to 5, 5 day a week work week, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
In the US, obsession takes over, and that's why they build some of the greatest companies, I think. So hard work pays off is probably the final statement I would say in this montage of quotes and cliches.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Sam. It's really stunning to me how you have mastered the art of relationship building. But yeah, as you mentioned, not so much in a transactional sense, but more creating like genuine connection and reciprocity with people. And yeah, I must say I experienced it now myself, and I think you really do have an exceptional talent in this. So yeah, please keep sharing this.
Thank you, and congratulations with what you're building. As I said before, I look forward to helping however I can, and keep it up. You've had some amazing people on here, myself excluded, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.